I think I spotted where Douglas MacArthur landed in 1950 of his famous Inchon Landing, which turned the tide in the Korea War. My Korean trip started in Shanghai Pudong International Airport. Today I'm taking Korean Airlines Flight 882 from Shanghai to Incheon, South Korea. I just spotted the inbound Korean Airlines Airbus 330 from Seoul. Korean Air 882 on May 19th left Shanghai Pudong Airport Gate 20 and arrives at Seoul Incheon International Airport Gate 221. Delta Airlines flight to Detroit is being pushed back from gate number 21. Bye-bye, Delta. Have a safe flight. China Eastern is a Shanghai-based major airline, so there are plenty of airplanes at this airport. Boarding process for Korean Air Flight 882 started. Looks like Royal Dutch Airline KLM and Korean Airline have the same paint vendor. They love that sky blue color of theirs. Korean Airline always lay their headphones on a tray right outside the boarding area. I think that streamlines the process and it saves time from the flight attendants have to distribute those things later on. But you're seeing a classic Airbus 330-242 configuration. And as you can see by looking at the flight path, we're going to fly right over the biggest island of South Korea, the Chucho Island. China Airlines flies daily to Taipei, Taiwan.
기내에서는 전자담배를 포함한 모든 흡연입니다. 기압에 이상이 있으면 선반에서 산소 마스크가 내려옵니다. 마스크를 잡아당겨 코와 입을 완전 Looks like we are going to be taking off from runway 16 right today.
I'm seeing a lot of windmills on the surface of the water. I don't know if you can see it. Many islands in southeast of Shanghai in the shallow waters.
From Sihua Seawall, we're literally about 10 miles from landing in Incheon International Airport. So right now, I'm going to pull out a couple of maps. We're going to review and find a key reference point so we will know what exactly we'll be looking at when we getting close to the landing zone. Womidao is the key link. Looks like all the actions relating to the landing happens just a little bit north and south of Womidao. Looks like the three beachheads, red, green, blue, are just a little bit north of the Highway 110 Incheon Bridge, which is pretty visually easy to identify. To the left of the screen, you see a bunch of boats. Then just above that, that's the Incheon Bridge. And I think all the three beachheads will be north of that. We will see and see if we can identify the Womidao or not. Maybe it's not that easy. We will see. We're about 4 miles from the end of the runway at this point. The Incheon Bridge is a reinforced concrete cable-stayed bridge. When it opened in October 2009, becomes the second bridge connection between Yeongjong Island and the mainland of Incheon. The bridge is South Korea's the second longest spanning cable-stayed bridge. We know the landing in Incheon under the command of General Douglas MacArthur happened a little bit north of the Incheon Bridge. But however, I did not take into consideration that we're landing in Incheon, so we are dropping our elevation drastically, so I wouldn't have any bird's eye vantage point to identify where the Womidao is. So here it is. That's my best estimation, and right under the blue logo of the wing of this Airbus, that's where United Nations force landed in 1950 in Incheon that turned the tide of the Korean War. Otherwise, the history would have to be rewritten. When North Koreans first attacked the South, they almost taken over the whole country until Douglas MacArthur engineered this strategic Inchon Landing that turned the tide. Pretty impressive. It's a military genius move, really. Any such military moves as to have a code name, and the code name for this Operation Chromite. The Battle of Incheon, also called the Inchon Landings, was an amphibious invasion and a battle of the Korean War that resulted in decisive victory and strategic reversal in favor of the United Nations command. The operations involved some 75,000 troops and 261 naval vessels and led to the recapture of the South Korean capital of Seoul 2 weeks later. The code name for Incheon operation was Operation Chromite, Chromite. The battle began on 15th September 1950 and ended on 19th September. through a surprise amphibious assault far from the Pusan Perimeter that the UN and Republic of Korean Army, from they called ROK forces, were desperately defending. Remember the first picture I just showed a little while ago, and it's only little blue areas left at the bottom tip of the Korea Peninsula, and the rest were taken over by North Korea. They were fighting desperately, trying to defend that area. This battle ended a string of victories by the North Korean People's Army, KPA. The subsequent United Nations forces recapture of Seoul partially severed the North Korean supply line in South Korea. As you probably already know, during that battle, the UN forces were commanded by General of the Army, Douglas MacArthur of the United States Army. MacArthur was the driving force behind our operation, overcoming the strong misgivings of more cautious generals to a risky assault over extremely unfavorable terrain. The battle was followed by a rapid collapse of the North Korean army. Within a month of the Inchon Landing, the Americans had taken 135,000 North Korean troops prisoners. Buoyed by their success, UN command under General Douglas MacArthur pushed across the 38th parallel into North Korea territory in October 1950. Actually, 38th parallel is merely 20 miles north of Incheon International Airport here. UN forces rapidly advanced up the peninsula, capturing North Korean capital Pyongyang and pushed toward the Yalu River, the border between North Korea and China. You may have heard this Home by Christmas offensive. So after the success in Incheon, underestimating the threat of Chinese intervention, UN forces pushed forward in late November 1950, anticipating a swift end to the war. And UN forces right on the Chinese border, that probably rattled the Chinese quite a bit. Then hundreds of thousands of Chinese troops secretly crossed the border and launched a massive counter-offensive, surprising UN forces and pushing them back down the peninsula in a grueling and freezing retreat. By early 1951, the UN forces managed to regroup and stabilize the front lines near the original 38th parallel. The conflict settled into a grinding, static trench warfare for the next 2.5 years. Hostilities finally ceased with an armistice signed in July 1953, which established a demilitarized zone, aka DMZ, that still divides the Korean Peninsula today. I was in Incheon Airport about 2 weeks ago, on May 14th, but I didn't stay. I went on a connecting flight to Shanghai that time. So this will be my first time visit to Seoul and to South Korea. Even though I do not need a visa to visit South Korea, I do have to complete a electronic travel authorization ETA form online, and that costs about $9. It's pretty straightforward. The only thing is that they ask you your address in South Korea, and that took a little bit doing input into it. But anyways, I'm here, I'm all set. I'm about to walk into the arrival hall of Incheon International Airport. Welcome to Korea.